Welcome to another BTL Exclusive. We're going to talk everything about the upcoming Super Bowl right here on the Bookit Sports Podcast Network, joined by your two hosts, Krabs and Jovan. My man, we are finally here. I know we don't have the two teams in the bowl that we wanted to see, but I still get excited about the Super Bowl. I don't care what anybody says. Jovan, are you in the same headspace here?
No, I kind of like the teams. And that's not just because I have an Eagles future in my pocket, so I'm glad they got there. I think it's not two teams you necessarily want to root for, but I think it's the best football matchup we could have gotten. So as much as I don't want the possibility of like Mahomes winning or Eagles fans winning a Super Bowl, I think it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of an L for me as a Commanders fan, right? Because I got the Eagles in there who some people say you root for your team in your division because it makes your division look better. And I find a hard time doing that. But I see what people are saying, right? Like I see what they're saying at least, where if the Eagles end up pulling this off, at least makes the Commanders look a little bit better. That's the team that beat them and knocked them out. So I get that in that sense. But, can I still find a way in my, body of root for the Eagles and Jalen Hurts? Hell no. That's just not going to happen. But, making money on it's one thing as well that we're going to talk about. So sometimes in this space, you got to put your biases to the sides and just lock in winners. And that might mean the Eagles. That might mean, Patrick Mahomes for a three-peat. We're going to talk about it. And you guys who are listening are going to get me and Jovan's cold and brutally honest takes on how we think the Super Bowl plays out. Before we dive in and start talking about best bets, PrizePicks Squares, anytime touchdown scores, and some of these novelty props, Jovan, I did want to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl in general and go over, any traditions, anything you look forward to during Super Bowl weekends that you typically end up, doing every year.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the last handful of years, it's been, I would say, pretty different for what I've done year to year across the board. Obviously, like we've been in Vegas watching it at Circa for a little bit. I've had personal parties with friends over. I've done just about everything, but actually go to the game, which is on the bucket list at some point. But I don't know. I'm a big at home guy. If you can get the right party, right group of people, right food, right dips for Goots, obviously, I think it can be absolutely fire.
Yeah, and we are going to be down in Dallas sweating out the Super Bowl together, which is awesome. It's great. I'm excited for that. But we will not have, Goots dips, right? You will not be able to make the OG dip that we're all looking forward to hearing what he's crafting up. He would have been in the lab. So Goots, I know you're listening to this as well. We'll go get some dips out and watch the Super Bowl together down there in Dallas. Okay, don't you worry about it.
Throw some dips down there for sure.
Yeah, they'll get something cooking up over there. Yeah, my favorite place to watch the bowl. I prefer to hear the broadcast, but let's just hope the bar we're going to is playing it out of the sound system and speakers, which I'm sure they will be, right? This is the Super Bowl we're talking about here. This ain't no normal game, okay? Kind of takes over everybody's lives that day. Are you with the people who think the Super Bowl should be earlier so that more people can indulge in it, or is that just a boomer take?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think they do it early enough, pushing it up like an hour and a half, depending on the year, depending on where it is, of course, like out of the full prime time slot. I kind of like that. It ends early enough to where like I don't think my night is over or I'm like eyes getting closed, going to bed right as it happens. Like I think
yeah. And I'll tell you what, Jovan, I typically try to be pretty disciplined in this game. One of my rules, my commandments is you don't take more than one play in a game, right? Who do you think you are? Do you have a crystal ball, right? How do you know every single outcome that's going to happen in one game? How about you try to stick to one winner, right? That's typically my mindset. But the Super Bowl, you kind of throw all that out the window, right? You have a little fun with this. You're taking some novelty props. You're taking some fun plays like coin toss and the national anthem length, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But this is kind of the one day out of the year where I really indulge in being a degenerate, I guess is the right way to put it, Jovan. Yeah. And I'm very excited for this upcoming Sunday. I'm excited to deploy units left and right, taking a couple of multiple bets, straights, sides, totals, you name it. I'm going to have coins on it.
Yeah, that's the best part. Right? It's the best part. I think the no multiple bets in one game rule, I think, doesn't apply to both football championships, college and the NFL. And for being really honest, probably the conference championships do get excluded a little bit because I know we had plenty of bets on those. But it's the most fun part of everything, especially being the fact that like we work in sports betting, but I think all of our friends and everybody we know, this is like the one time a year they will also be completely degenerate, which is fun to get them involved too.
Sure. I've already seen plenty of losers in the group chat. Yep. 100%. People are already talking. Well, Jovan, I brought up the coin toss. I wanted to talk about this with you because, although it is a 50-50 shot, I do have some data for you. And I do bet the coin toss every single year. I will have a play on it this year. And I'm happy to let you know on what that is right now, guys. Let's dive into the numbers, though, and take a peep at how the coin toss has played out in recent Super Bowls. 28 heads, 30 tails. So a couple more tails all time, 52% for tails. 3 of the last 4 years, we've seen heads. That's been the outcome. So heads has been hot, but 6 of the last 10 years have been tails. So before this little hot stretch of, heads winning 3 of the last 4, it was all tails. Let's not forget about that. Okay. And the Chiefs, we know they've been in 4 Super Bowls recently, Jovan, 2-2 for heads and tails in their 4 Super Bowls. So, no life hack, no cheat code there. I've already got my play. If you want to hear it, I already know what the coin toss is going to be and how that guy's flipping that bitch.
Oh, let me hear it. You're the coin toss sharp here.
Sure. Look, heads has been hot recently, and I know tails has the overall advantage, but I am going to go with tails. Like that old saying says, tails never fails. I agree. And I think this weekend on Sunday, you're going to see that referee, whether it's rigged or not, you're going to see him flip tails. And that little hot streak for heads, it's over. Finito, finished, consider it done. Tails never fails.
Heads insanity run is over per Krabs.
It's over. Kiss it goodbye. It was fun. It was a great story. You might see an ESPN 30 for 30 about it, right? The run for heads in the last 4 Super Bowls, but it's over. The legacy run, done. It's all tails.
Unbelievable.
All tails. I do want this on record, though, to anybody who does not sense the sarcasm. It is a 50-50 shot. Okay, and there's nothing sharp about this, but I will be placing some coins on tails. All right, and that's how we get the ball rolling. That's more important than the actual bet on the Super Bowl, Jovan, because if you start out with a loser before the game even starts, the vibes are just atrocious. You got to hit the coin toss bet.
The early coin toss really sets the tone.
Yeah, it does. And I remember being at Circa last year for the Super Bowl, and Trent was in piss, and I was getting absolutely lit up, chugging a beer, I believe, when the coin toss hit. It just rolls you right into the Super Bowl, immaculate vibes. Some say it's more important than the actual bet on the game. Not me, but some. Okay?
I've heard that.
Yeah. National Anthem. Does that pique your interest? Does that tickle your fancy, Jovan? Betting on that?
Yeah, that might tickle Jim. I'm not the biggest national anthem better, but I know that's the funnest or most fun part that I see all my friends get into before the game. Obviously, they bet a lot of the game stuff, but that's the most degenerate activity I see non-degenerates get involved in. So I know that it's been a big hit with some timing leaks the last couple of years. So I'm interested where your head's at this year.
There have been some leaks. There's people who spend way too much time on this, but Jovan, I'm one of them. And I did some lab work here. I feel like I know all the ins and outs of the national anthem. So let me give you some factoids here, or some nuggets about it. This year, it's John Baptiste. He's going to give the national anthem on Sunday. The over-under is at 120.5 with the over juiced. I've seen minus 150. I've seen minus 140. The over's juicy, pretty much wherever you look. Last year, it was Reba. If you remember Reba McEntire, she absolutely milked it for 90 seconds. And this year is even higher, Jovan. And the over hit last year is 89.5. W hook for the over bettors. Reba came through. She milked it, and the over hit. This year, Baptiste is minus 400 to play the piano during the performance. So in my eyes, people are thinking, that might distract him. That might, cause him to take a little bit more time on the national anthem. I'm thinking maybe that keeps his tempo up, right? Keeps his tempo crispy. If he's playing the piano during it, right, he can't really lose his sync. He's got to stay locked in. It's not like he can milk the notes. He's got to keep typing away, right? So in my mind, I think that could be a little bit of a trap. And if this guy's bringing a piano out to play, everyone's going to be thinking he's milking it, taking the over. I'm thinking otherwise. And Jovan, I'll tell you what, the last 3 performers have all been country singers. And country singers, they take a little bit longer to talk. They're milking that shit. I think this year, John Baptiste could be a sneaky plus chicken under. And I'll tell you what, I found 2 of his recent performances over the years. In 2017, he milked it during the U.S. Open for tennis, 1:46. But the NBA All-Star game that he did a couple years after that was only 1:29. So when the lights got brighter, he tightened up, he shortened it up. The lights couldn't be brighter in the Super Bowl coming up. I'm thinking it might be even shorter and the nerves might get to him. This might be the quickest tempo and pace you see in a national anthem in your lifetime. Give me the under a plus chicken.
Wow. The Lights Too Bright National Anthem POD from Krabs.
People are thinking that piano is going to have them, taking a sweet time. I think it helps them keep the tempo crispy.
Wow. I know I'm not familiar with, what did you say? He did the U.S. Open in one of his first ones. I'm not familiar with his game on that, but I know when he did do the NBA All-Star game, he had quite the time in the piano before the singing actually even got started. So I wonder if he's going to do that.
Well, that doesn't even count, and that doesn't even count because it's.
I know. I'm just wondering how he might mix it in. Maybe it's like a little New Orleans jazz tribute too.
He could milk it in the beginning before he even says a peep, before that timer even starts. That could be when you see John Baptiste milking this puppy. Yep.
That could be, the fake milk.
Spoiled fake milk. I've already seen it. Give me the
milk.
under. Give me the under. All right. Enough talking about the national anthem and the coin toss. Jovan, you want to talk about some real winners?
Let's do it.
Jovan, before we give the people some of our best bets, anytime touchdown scores, PrizePicks Squares, all the winners, can I give you a couple nuggets for the Super Bowl coming up?
Drop the nugs.
Sure. Let's get to it. These are pretty crazy. The team that is the better seeds remaining in the Super Bowl is just 2-16-2 against the spread. That's 11% in the last 27 Super Bowls. That one blew my mind.
That's kind of insane. Right? Insane numbers. Think about it.
Go ahead and decipher this for you guys if you couldn't understand that. But the better seeds stinks against the spreads in all the recent Super Bowls, coming through at 11% against the spread in the last 27. That is atrocious, and that goes hand in hand with how I think about betting, right? Give me the dog. Give me the worst team, right? And typically that ends up panning out on the biggest stage, a.k.a. the Super Bowl. A couple other nuggets here. Favorites in the Super Bowl, they're 35-22 straight up, but they're only 25-29-3. That's 46% against the spread. However, in the last 23 years, underdogs, man, they've been cashing against the spreads. 17-6. That's 74% against the spreads in the last 17 years. So that is an unbelievable clip that dogs have been barking in the Super Bowl over the last near 2 decades. Insane. Absolutely insane. Let's not forget Kansas City pulled off 2 upsets in their last 2 Super Bowls when they were plus 1.5 point dogs. Does that spread sound familiar? Because that's what the spread's at for this upcoming Super Bowl when the Chiefs are now minus 1.5 point favorites. Interesting. Teams that rush for more yards in the Super Bowl are 43-15 straight up, and they are 41-14-3 against the spread. That's a 75% clip. I'm no rocket scientist, but even if Saquon Barkley goes less than his rushing yards or his prop, I still feel like the Eagles are going to have more yards on the ground in this game overall. Yeah. I think the edge there is for the Eagles. And then the Eagles are 9-4 in games refereed by Ron Tolbert. They're wheeling out Ron out there for this big game. You're going to see him out there. The Chiefs are only 5-5. Okay, so if you believe in that type of thing, if you think the refs are involved in this, big Ron Tolbert might be an Eagles fan. 9-4.
Sneak Birds fan. I love me some ref nuts in the Super Bowl, man.
Could be. All right, Jovan, you want to get into some best bets?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
All right, let's get right into it. Let's talk about some of our favorite bets in this Super Bowl, Jovan. And the Chiefs are minus 1.5, like I was talking about earlier. Not surprised to see them as a favorite, right? They have won 2 straight Super Bowls, and no team has ever won 3 in a row. So not surprised to see the Eagles are dogs. And this total that opened up 48-ish, depends on where you're looking, the night after the last rounds of the playoffs 2 weeks ago, it bounced up to 49.5. I don't think I saw some 50s. Maybe it was there for a second, but it got all the way up to 49.5. Now we're seeing it down to 48.5, which I feel like is pretty much where it opened up. So not a ton of crazy movement there on the total, but it did briefly move up and then move back down. Jovan, I want to go ahead and ask you and get right to the chase here. Favorite bet in the Super Bowl on the books. What is it?
The Eagles on the ML, which I'm sure you can get down with as well. Has to be straight to the points because I don't know. I've been riding this team really since preseason because they're my preseason Super Bowl pick, but especially in the playoffs because going into the latter half of the regular season, I know Hurts was hurt. A lot of guys were hurt that were not named Saquon, so they're pretty banged up. Didn't really look impressive in really any game, and the Chiefs were starting to get stronger and stronger. So it was a pretty popular narrative that the Eagles really didn't have much of a shot to get here. They're, trendy dogs against them in every single round. They just hadn't really looked impressive or put it together. Even in like the first round of the playoffs, nobody believed because all they had to do was gut out a game against the Packers. A lot of that was on the ground. The offense didn't look fantastic, but leading into this, and especially leading into the NFC Championship, the thing that I'm glad we got to see, because I've been standing on business for that take, I guess, kind of on an island for the last couple of weeks. Everybody just assumed Jalen Hurts sucked and couldn't throw the ball, when in reality it was because all he was doing was handing the ball off to Saquon in games that were tough weather games, or Saquon just simply was dominated on the ground. The Commanders kind of forced him to open up a little bit early in that game. Part of that was because they were loading the box, but the other part of it is kind of strategy from the offensive game plan of the Eagles. We all found out very well in that 55-point performance, Krabs, that Jalen Hurts is very capable still of throwing the ball. And I think he's been getting healthier as the playoffs have been progressing, minus the one little blip of the injury where he kind of re-injured, I believe it was his ankle. But last game, I didn't really have any lack of confidence in Jalen Hurts' ability to throw the ball, but I think we collectively got a good look of just what that offense can be. Obviously, you add the dynamic element of Saquon that's not really going in there. And I know it's a tough defense they're facing, tough 3P they're facing, but I'm still standing on business that the Eagles are the ones to snap this streak.
I agree. I think they do as well. I need to see it. I need to see a team win 3 times in a row. You know how hard that is? First off, you know how hard it is to get to 3 Super Bowls in a row? I mean, there's been teams that have done it and lost every single time. Cough, cough, the Bills. But just to get there in the first place, to have a season, you got to have luck on your side. You got to have the ball bounce your way more often than not to put yourself in a position to run that back for a 3rd straight time. That doesn't just happen based off of skill. That doesn't just happen based off of Andy Reid's. You need the ball to bounce your way as well, and it has. And it also helps when you have the best quarterback probably ever to play the sports, and he's going to continue to prove that over the next decade and a half. Patrick Mahomes is just different. He's him. But in my opinion, if Pat Mahomes is winning a 3rd in a row, they'd be a little bit more than 1.5-point favorites. They would be. No discredit to the Eagles. They've been looking great. I mean, like you just said, they spanked my Commanders in that last round. It wasn't even really close. But in my opinion, if the Chiefs had a chance, they'd be laying more points. And I want to take the plus 1.5 for one reason and one reason only instead of the ML. And that's because of Patrick Mahomes and some fluke shit. Maybe he manufactures a 90-yard drive with 1 minute left, gets his team down there, and they end up winning by 1. You know what? If that's how the Chiefs end up doing it and making history and being the first team ever to win 3 times in a row, that's probably how it has to be. It's probably going to be on some crazy fluke last-second Hail Mary where they end up winning by 1, or maybe they go for 2, and Andy Reid is just sitting there smiling, waiting for his cheeseburger. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me. So in that case, I will take the plus 1.5. I think if the Eagles were playing any other team, Jovan, I would just take the ML. And I do think they win, and I think that's a great look. But in this case, against Mahomes, maybe I'm just scared. Maybe it's because he's the GOAT, but I'm taking that point.
Yeah, I can respect that.
Probably won't matter. Hopefully it doesn't, right? But I'm taking it.
Yeah, right? I have just a tough time believing this line is going to stay where it is, too. I think we get a little closer to the Super Bowl, and that 1.5 might turn into 1, and the pick 'em, and maybe flip the other way, which would be great. But I'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Okay. Well, I talked about the Eagles and taking them plus 1.5, but that is not my best bet. My best bet's the under. Give me the under.
Classic Krabs under.
Has to be done. Look, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm probably taking the under in 9.5 out of 10 Super Bowls. Just no matter what. Just look at the spot. It has to be done. Legally obligated as a contrarian, as a guy who likes to fade the public, take nasty plays that don't make any sense. The under is screaming my name in every Super Bowl, no matter the circumstance. But Jovan, this one is a little bit nastier. Okay, this is not Ma and Pa's normal Super Bowl. These teams are coming off of electric offensive performances. We had a record amount of points in the conference championship weekends, most points ever in a conference championship weekend last weekend. I have to take the under in this game. I have to lean on the defenses. I have to lean on Spags and that Chiefs defense to show up in the Super Bowl like they do in damn near every single Super Bowl, and like they did in the last one to carry Mahomes to a Super Bowl, because that defense is good. They might not be the best in football, but they're above average. They're great, I would say, at least. And the Eagles defense as well, no slouch. They thrive off of turnovers. And I'll tell you what, we'll talk about turnovers here in a moment when we get to the PrizePicks Squares, but the Eagles are going to need to force some. Let's just hope it doesn't put them on the 20-yard line and cost me coins betting this under in the game, right? But I think the Eagles defense shows up in this one, and that's what carries them to a big-time win in this game. And with that total dropping back down to 48.5, not only are people just going to blindly bet the overs, but every square and their mother is going to be on the over in this game after what they saw 2 weekends ago in the conference championship weekend. Points, points, points. After 2 weeks off, some rust, some nerves, give me the under. It has to be done.
It's classic. It's classic Krabs. Championship game
has
under.
To be done. Yep.
Yeah. I'm certainly not taking the over. I think I kind of lean more to the first half, letting it be cagey, and then it eventually will open up. So I'm maybe a little worried about full game, but you couldn't pay me to take that over after what those two teams did. Not only last week in the conference championship, but also 2 years ago in the Super Bowl, where that game had 73 total points, 38-35.
Sort. Absolutely sort. This time around, you're going to see some regression offensively. You're going to see some nerves. The brightest of lights for Patrick Mahomes and for the Eagles and for Jalen Hurts in his career, to be honest with you. It's going to show. It's going to show. And when I talk about some of these novelty props and some of these cheeky props I'm seeing up on the books towards the end, some of them might make you think this under's hitting.
Really?
Right? Might actually help my argument. We'll get to that towards the end. Okay? For now, let's keep talking about best bets. I'll take the Eagles plus 1.5. Give me the under in the game. You're confident in the Eagles on the money line? Is that your favorite play by far? Only one you're rocking with on the books?
That is, yes.
Okay. That's fair. Only one game. Can't milk you for much. Why don't we talk about some PrizePicks Squares? You down?
I'm very down.
Let's run it. All right, Jovan. I've never seen more categories up in my life on PrizePicks than for the Super Bowl coming up. They're inventing new categories for the Super Bowl. A lot of punter squares up. We could talk about some of those too. Don't get too excited, but a lot of options and zero excuses for us. We got to cash on PrizePicks for the big Super Bowl. I want to ask you, what is your favorite square?
That's tough, Krabs. We got so many squares up on the board, man. But I do have one for you, and it's on the Eagles side. Which one of them actually we'll talk about when we get to touchdowns. Also a square, but I left that for the end. I like Jalen Hurts' pass attempts in this game. And maybe that's one of the reasons I'm a little afraid of the full game under and just wanted to keep it the first half, even though I do think a lot of these can come in the first half. But you're this Eagles team that is going to see a lot of loaded boxes. We know that. They have Saquon Barkley. A lot of the time it's not going to matter because he's just that ridiculous. That offensive line is dominant. So it's going to be strength versus strength in that area. But if I'm the Eagles, and it was a little different because they did this against the Rams a little bit. They did this against the Commanders too, to some degree. I know they opened up the game with the long Saquon run, but largely there was a lot of early aggression from the passing standpoint. I think they're going to open up the game passing to kind of set up the run. And not that they need to do that, again, because they're playing with Saquon Barkley and a very dominant offensive line, but you're playing a team that is very solid in man coverage, incredibly solid at the back. You don't want their run game or their D-line in the run game to really get going. I think you have to open it up, even if it's in the short game very early. And I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to do that successfully, which is why I think you're going to win the game. But I think Saquon is not as much going to get used in just pure volume, 1st and 10, 2nd and 10, just kind of running to set up the shorter third downs, 2nd and 3rd downs. I think it's more going to be the opposite, where the pass game is opening up, even if it's in the short game, and then you have Saquon to get these marginal yards down the field, which, again, I think is going to be very successful. So his pass attempts is at 27.5 right now. I think regardless of game script, I think that's set up pretty well. And God forbid I am wrong and the Chiefs end up being the one to take this game and Pat three-peats. Obviously, the game script would support that, but I think you got to open it up early more so.
Well, maybe the Chiefs can do what the Commanders failed to do, and that's stack the box and have it work a time or two. And maybe you see the Eagles having to rely on Jalen Hurts, who everybody thinks can't throw and has one arm, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely a contrarian, nasty look that I could get behind.
I don't think it's that nasty.
Yeah, I mean, taking the underdogs, QBs, pass completions or attempts, probably not the nastiest, right? Because they're underdogs, I guess. But They do have Saquon Barkley in the backfields. I feel like everybody's initial inkling will be taking his fantasy score, taking his more than attempts. I wouldn't be surprised if Spags has a little bit of success at times, slowing down Saquon for maybe the first time we've seen in months. This dude's been on a fucking tear. And then they got to rely on Jalen Hurts. And I think there's a couple receivers, maybe not A.J. Brown as much as he was involved against the Commanders. And he just had such a big height difference on the corners where he just had such an edge. I would not be surprised if we see another receiver on that Eagles team get involved and help out Jalen Hurts, finding some seams down the field, and maybe even a deep shot or two. We'll talk about that here in a second. I want to go over my favorite square, and it's actually a Chiefs square, as I like the Eagles. It's Pat Mahomes rushing yards. And maybe this is square. You could tell me, but Pat Mahomes, I'm using football brain here. What does Mahomes do when the lights get bright, when the moments are big, and when he looks around and you see the rest of that offense and you're asking yourself, how the fuck does this guy do it with this team, with the pieces around him at this point? He runs. And he runs a lot in the playoffs. Okay, I'm looking at his last 4 Super Bowl performances specifically, and he had 29 yards the first Super Bowl. Hey, maybe he had some nerves, right? Maybe that wasn't his best performance on the ground. After that, he had 33 yards. Then he had 44 yards on the ground. Then he had a 66 piece. And that last Super Bowl where he was running like a chicken with his head cut off, getting first downs left and right, I have the vision engraved in my brain of him stretching out his arm and getting the first down every single time against the 49ers in that game. And I'll be honest, Jovan, I'm not seeing anything different in this one, right? If the Eagles are stacking the box or if they're trying to blitz and get in his heads, I think you're going to have to see Pat Mahomes running and taking off like he's done in damn near every single Super Bowl he's been in. He's hit this number in 3 of his 4 bowls. If you look at how he's been trending, he's only run for more yards than every Super Bowl, and he's only had less weapons, in my opinion, offensively, or at least worse weapons this time around. He might have to do it himself. And this also got bumped up as well. I'll take Mahomes more than 30.5 rushing yards in the bowl when the lights are brightest.
Sure. I mean, I can never really tell you any different. And a couple of these quarterbacks, when they get into games like this, important games, whether it's the conference championship, just a playoff game, or of course, in Pat Mahomes' case, he's always here in the Super Bowl. Guys like him, guys like Josh Allen, when lights are the brightest and they really need to get their team going, they run. It's been the story of their entire career. So I will never tell you no about that. Call it square, whatever you want, but I think he's going to be active with his legs too. I like that.
Okay. Let me throw a couple more squares at you that I'm liking, and I want your quick thoughts. And then I'm going to give you the floor to finish off talking about some of these other squares you're loving. But I got another Pat Mahomes square that I wanted to talk about here. His interception square. Yep.
You knew it was coming.
You knew it was coming. It was actually a normal square a couple days ago, and now it's a demon for the more than, which is not ideal, right? But I don't even give a shit. He's throwing a pick in this game, maybe 2, against this stout Eagles defense that thrives off of turnovers. If you look at how this Eagles team has won so many games this season, it's forcing turnovers on the defensive side of the ball. You could talk about Saquon, you could talk about Hurts, but this team is top 5 in turnovers in the NFL. I think they're unbelievable, especially at punching out footballs as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up forcing one out from Kareem Hunt or Pacheco at one point in this game, or maybe even Mahomes if he's running around like he's a running back himself. But I've already seen it, Jovan. Pat Mahomes throwing a pick against a nasty secondary that's just foaming at the mouth for a matchup and some revenge at that Super Bowl a couple years ago. I think they're forcing a turnover for Mahomes, who's thrown 5 picks in the 4 Super Bowls he's been in. He throws picks in the ball. They just haven't bit him in the ass yet. I think it does this time around. And I'll take that demon interception square.
Yeah. Again, another one where I just knew you're going to be taking, and you have no other choice. Has to be done.
These ones I might be able to sell you on a little bit more coming up here. Harrison Butker, more than 1.5 field goals made. Now it is a goblin. Okay. We'll see where it ends up around kickoff, but it is a goblin right now, but I've already seen it. Harrison Butker, who worked his butt off to come back from an injury this year to be able to kick for this team in the playoffs. He might not have, his full strength back. He might not be kicking 55-yarders right now. He's also at the tail end of his career as well. So he's not, in prime form. But what a year for Harrison Butker, battling adversity, coming back. And I know, you can have your opinions on the guy and the offseason that he had, right, and some of his actions. But on the field, I mean, he's one of the best, most underrated kickers in the NFL. He's dealt with adversity this season, and seeing him up for a goblin field goals made when he has not been a major factor of this offense in recent weeks. In a game where I like the under, where I think that the Chiefs are going to have to settle for field goals at times against this Eagles defense that I think is very solid and honestly underappreciated. I think you're going to see some more field goal attempts. And Harrison Butker, I mean, he had 4 field goal attempts in that last Super Bowl. Before that, he had 2 attempts. The one before that, he had 3. So the volume is there. And in a game where I like the under, in a game where I like the Eagles, I'll take Harrison Butker, even if it's a gambling price, to kick more than 1.5 field goals.
Yep, can definitely get down with that.
One more for you. This one's for DJ Fitz. Saquon Barkley, more than 13.5 receiving yards. I'm sure you can get down with that. I know you like your running back, cheeky receiving yard squares, but everyone thinks it's going to be Saquon on the grounds. I don't know if I've gotten there yet to be able to fade him and get that nasty, Jovan, but I'll take him to be more of a factor in the receiving game. In a lot of big games this year, when the lights have been bright, you've seen Saquon break out a couple screens. I think in this case, when they're stacking the box or when they're blitzing, you're going to see him break off 1, maybe 2. That's all it's going to take to hit this more than 13.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, definitely in on that. I'll be on that with you, especially when they play like they did more so in the Rams and Commanders game where they're throwing a little bit early, which big Saquon runs definitely help the unpredictability of it too. But he runs a lot more routes. So, I mean, Gainwell also does for that matter. And if he has a square up come game time in the receiving game, I'll take that too. But Saquon is going to be running routes, going to be catching passes.
Yep.
So, I'm always in.
Good. Want to hear about some of your other squares?
Sure. I got a couple for you. The one, I mean, just feel-good story that I have to bet, not just for this purpose, but because I also think it's a winner on the X and O's football side of things. DeAndre Hopkins, more than his receiving yards, which is at 12.5. And he's been essentially like phased out of the offense. He hasn't been nearly as big a part of the offense as I think people thought he would be when he came over in the trade, especially last game. Last game was his lowest route total of the entirety of the season. So, granted, much different matchup against the Bills because the Bills, as much as Pat, was successful throwing the ball in the air, it was a weird matchup. And we talked about this on the pod because the Bills are super susceptible on the ground. But the thing is, the Chiefs aren't exactly built like that to just run ground and pound, even though they tried for a bit with Kareem Hunt and then some carries to Isaiah Pacheco and P. Ryan as well. But other than that, it was a weird game for the offense to kind of navigate. And we found that out in a couple of different ways. Marquise Brown was getting fed early, and then Worthy had his fair share of time. So, it was strange. In this game, you're going up against a very tough defense that is not only incredible at every level of the defense, but they're going to get pressure on Pat Mahomes more so than I think any team they faced so far in the playoffs. But they're also just going to be really solid, especially when they're in man coverage in the back. The one thing that you know about DeAndre Hopkins, even though this is not the DeAndre Hopkins that was mossing guys 5 times a game in Tennessee, but it's a guy who's been in the league 12 years, is finally in his first Super Bowl, and he's made a lot of his living off contested catches. And even though he hasn't been this incredible target share, volume type guy with the Chiefs, I can want to go out and say, especially if Pat Mahomes is under a little bit of pressure in this game, which I think he will be, you're going to have one-on-ones on the outside. You're going to throw at least one up to DeAndre Hopkins. I think it's going to exceed that in one catch alone potentially, but you're putting him out there to win some matchups. So I think as much as I think Kelsey is going to be an obvious feature in winning his matchups against the linebackers and some of the slot guys that put up against him, Worthy is going to be a guy you're going to use a lot too in a bunch of different ways. You got DeAndre Hopkins up there, a future Hall of Famer, one of the best guys in our generation to lace him up at his position. Again, finally getting here after 12 years. It just feels like it has to be done, Krabs.
Yeah, I could get behind it. And wouldn't it be something if, you're talking about his snaps, being limited at the end of the season and in the postseason? I feel like that could be intentional, right? I feel like that could be Andy Reid having a couple tricks up his sleeve saying, hey, DeAndre, I know you're pissed you're not getting the rock right now in the postseason, but we need you for the big dance, right? We need you for that big game. You didn't bring him over here for nothing. You didn't bring him over here not to use him. And he was successful at times this season as a fantasy football owner. He had a couple decent games. He still has some juice left in the tank. I just feel like they're conserving him and almost hiding him and preserving him for this big game. Wouldn't be shocked if he ends up coming through. I honestly liked him to score a touchdown. I would not be shocked if he ends up finding the end zone. I almost put that in there myself. But D-Hop more than 12.5 receiving yards, sign me up.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I don't want to compare the two's roles because they're very different, but I can't get the moment out of my head. And I know I hope it ends better for him because this other guy got hurt when it happened, but remember Odell's last hurrah in the Super Bowl with the Rams, which again, he was a much more important factor in that offense during the playoff run and second half of the year than Hopkins has been. But I will always remember that long touchdown catch he had early in the game before he ended up getting hurt and tearing his ACL, which was super unfortunate. But that long touchdown catch felt like his final hurrah pretty much in the NFL, because then he followed up going to the Ravens where he didn't do all that much, and the Dolphins, and now he's essentially out of the league, and he's probably going to officially retire relatively soon. This feels like, I don't know about the end of the line for Hopkins, but after he's been on 4 different teams in 12 years, you got the midseason trade to get him to the Super Bowl. He beat the Texans in the process, funny enough. This feels like he's due for some big moment, big catch, big play that, it's going to be the highlight of his career. So I feel like that's coming, which is also why I want to take the yards. So I've got that square for you, Krabs.
Love it.
The other guy on the receiving side, you talked about a little Saquon receiving yards, running back receiving yards will pretty much always be on my card. I want to take Isaiah Pacheco on the other side of things for similar reasons, because he did get active and hit this line in the Bills game, but it was a strange couple ways that he hit it, because, again, they were trying to run the ball because that's how you beat the Bills, kind of running up the middle, but the Bills also had missing safety, so they wanted to kind of go short chunk yardage or just bombs over the top was kind of the way you wanted to attack them. That's not the way you want to attack the Eagles. That's simply not going to work because, again, their front seven is going to be much tougher than any team the Chiefs have faced, I would say, all season, but especially in the playoff round. I respect the Texans defense, but it does not hold a candle to what the Eagles are going to do on that front seven. So running the football is going to be tough. And if you're Pat Mahomes, obviously you want to get the ball out of your hands quick. You want to slow down that pass rush. Some of that can come from Travis Kelce. Some of that can come from Xavier Worthy. But the guy who, even though Kareem Hunt has been the bulk back in terms of carries, Isaiah Pacheco is still relatively matching his route share, which I think is pretty important. Him and Perine. Perine got a long catch to kind of ice the game, but he's not running all that many routes for the majority of the game, that was a funny play. Shout out Shelley for cashing on that. But Isaiah Pacheco is sitting at 4.5 yards. He's been getting healthier throughout the playoffs too. He was just coming back at the end of the regular season. And I think it's important. Another one that they've probably been preserving a little bit heading into the playoffs. So I think he's going to have to catch a couple passes, or in this case, his line's 4.5. He might only need to catch one. So I'm taking that running back receiving yards for the Chiefs.
Yep. I could get down with it. I think he'll be more of a factor than Kareem Hunt in this game for the Chiefs. I honestly like Pacheco's rushing yards as well, but I'm already too invested in the under and the Eagles, so I won't be taking that. I don't want to root for that, but I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up eclipsing that. Wouldn't mind the combo yards and more of the story, I guess. I wouldn't be surprised if Andy Reid was kind of preserving, the actual young, youthful, good running back for the last couple of weeks. And we've kind of seen him get the most he possibly can out of Kareem Hunt here the last couple of weeks. And maybe we see a little bit of a shift in the big game when they need some fresh legs. Wouldn't be surprised if it's more Pacheco and less Kareem Hunt in this one for the Chiefs. So either way, whatever squares you're taking, I would not mind it one bit.
Sure. No, I'll close it out with this. I guess some of my squares have been relatively cute. I guess minus Hurts, but not taking really any goats on the Chiefs, at least when we're talking about this. But the one guy I probably will square up because I am taking Jalen Hurts to throw the ball quite a bit in this game. And I think it's going to be a pretty big factor when he does do that, especially against a really tough defense. A majority of the, shallow target share has gone to Dallas Goedert. So I know he's been a pretty reliable wagon for a majority of this playoff run, and even dating back to the end of the regular season. A lot of us have been taking him, and it's been working out beautifully. He just absolutely grubbed against the Commanders, had a fantastic game. So I think it's going to be more of the same, especially if nothing is open deep, which, don't get me wrong, I think you'll have your chance if you're Jalen Hurts to take those shots, whether it's A.J. Brown or Devontae, but we do know how solid this Chiefs defense is. They're going to strap up. They're going to play bump and run against a lot of those wide receivers, and I think if you're going to look to get the ball out of your hands quickly and get the ball out of your hands in the flats especially, I don't think it's going to come too much from those outside receivers. I think Goddard's going to have to be the safety net that he's been for the last couple weeks for Jalen Hurts. So again, if I'm taking him to throw the ball quite a bit, yes, I like the volume in terms of the deep game that he's going to have to employ at some point with Smith and A.J. Brown. But you touched on Saquon Barkley, which I think is a solid shallow option as well. But Dallas Goedert, I'm going to continue betting him. So taking his 5 receptions.
Okay. Yeah, I would not be surprised if he grubs again. Little safety net for Jalen Hurts. The dude absolutely dominated the Commanders 2 weeks ago.
Dominant.
Wouldn't be shocked if he runs it back. Okay. You want to talk about some anytime touchdown scores?
Let's do it.
Let's talk about some gents who we think are finding pay dirt in the final game of the season here, Jovan. I got 2, one from each team. And I talked about or hinted at an Eagles weapon or an Eagles receiver who I think might find the end zone in this one. I think there's going to be 2 big plays in this game, and that's it. I like the under in the game. Here's the 2 big plays I'm seeing. An Eagles turnover, probably when the Chiefs are driving, looking like they're about to either retake the lead or establish, a multi-possession lead in the game. You're going to see the Eagles force a turnover, probably in the Chiefs' red zone, and it's going to change the game. That's big play number 1. Big play number 2 I'm seeing. I think Devonta Smith is breaking one in this game. And I know the Chiefs defense doesn't make many mistakes, like you were talking about, Jovan. They're very sound, very smart unit, right? They really don't fuck up a ton. But I'm seeing one big mistake in this game, and I'm seeing Devonta Smith, who we know has big play potential, right? This guy's middle name is, the deep threat touchdown player for the Eagles. I think he's breaking one against the Chiefs. I think he's taking the cap off the defense, and I think Jalen Hurts, this might be one of those completions you're talking about earlier, finds his deep threat, Devonta Smith, wide open down the end zone for a 50-plus yard touchdown. And wouldn't it be something after 2 weeks ago, Jovan, when we took Jalen Hurts' longest reception length, more than, right? And it got hooked under, and we got absolutely cucked on that play.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be something if we see Devonta Smith take the cap off the defense in this game against a much better defense for a mistake or a big play here and keeps the Eagles in this one? I've already seen it. I think Devonta Smith is finding the end zone on a big play and a mistake from that Chiefs secondary.
Yeah, I'm always down for some Devonta Smith grabs, especially, after he dropped that one. I know he got interfered with, so it was a flag anyway, but, he dropped an easy touchdown in the end zone on Lattimore, I believe, in that Commanders game. So maybe his little get back from that, I wouldn't mind at all.
I got another one for you.
Let me hear
Probably
it.
Not expecting this. He's a Chief. He's annoying. He's got podcasts while he's still playing. He's all over the TVs. He's everywhere. And it's Travis Kelce.
No way you're taking Kelce.
Travis Kelce, who's been pretty useless, to be honest with you, this entire season, let alone of late. He's finding the end zone. The safety net for Pat Mahomes. Wouldn't it be something after all this hate, all this, trash talking? People are saying he's so washed. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't show up. He looks slow. He can't create space. He's dropping passes. He's not scoring touchdowns like he was a couple years ago when he's dropping double-digit tutties a season. Wouldn't it be something if he shows up in the big game for Pat Mahomes? And I'm not saying it results in a win or another victory or a third in a row for the Chiefs, but to keep them in this game, right? You might see Travis Kelce find the end zone at some points, creating space. He's been a machine in the Super Bowl. He's had 6+ receptions in all 4 Super Bowls he's played in his career. And he's scored in 2 of the 3 most recent Chiefs victories of late in the Super Bowl over the last 10 years. So when they win, he scores. And even if they don't win, he gets fed the rock. I don't think that's going to change at all in this game. And in the red zone, I'm seeing Travis Kelce coming down with one and keeping the Chiefs in this game and keeping their three-peat hopes alive.
Can't believe I just heard that come out of your mouth, Krabs. Travis Kelce touchdown sell job in the Super Bowl.
Doesn't feel right, and that's how I know it's hitting.
Yeah, probably is. Unbelievable, man. Well,
you got some touchdown scores for us?
Yeah, you got your goat out of the way. I'll get my goat out of the way. I am betting on the Eagles, and as much as I love Saquon Barkley, I think they're going to do, of course, everything in their power to stop him, especially in the end zone. They do. As a defense, Spag's whole goal of his offense, or of his defense, when you're facing an offense with a significant strong point, is to avoid that significant point from getting into the end zone. So I think you're going to sell out on keeping Saquon out of the end zone, even if it results in him getting yards on the way there. Give me the brotherly in the Super Bowl. I know he's coming off a game where he added a couple of them against the Commanders. Of course, that's what he does against a much weaker front, but I think they're going to get creative in how they use his legs. And it would be cool, obviously, if you end up at the 1 and you have a couple brotherly shove attempts because of a pass interference call at the goal line, which I could very well see happening to shut down the Chiefs always get help from the refs narrative. It would be funny if there was a big one to benefit the Eagles and put them at the 1, but that can happen, as well as Saquon, just munching him down the field, and then you get a brotherly shove. But you're going to have to get creative. What teams love to do when you have a stacked box against them and you have a really good running back and a defense that's pinching is you love to pull the ball. And we've talked about this on BTL before weekend previews. We've talked about this, talking about Jaden Daniels in the playoffs too, I believe against the Lions and the Bucks. We were talking about just how viable pulling at the goal line with your legs is going to be. And this doesn't mean you have to be at the 1 or the 2 or the point where you're doing the brotherly shove, but even when you're back out inside the 10, probably at like the 7 or 8, I can see this happening quite a bit too. And it doesn't have to be as long a run as he had in the first round of the playoffs either. I think this is going to be a game where you have a bunch of creative approaches for Jalen Hurts' legs, and that doesn't mean him just power running down the Chiefs' throat. That's not simply going to happen. But I still think he gets in the end zone, and I think that's kind of the key to them stamping that, hey, we're here in the Super Bowl.
Am I allowed to say I hope you're wrong?
Yeah, of course.
Because although I'll have an Eagles ticket in my pocket, I don't even know if I can get myself to say I want to see that happen. I don't want to see it.
Yeah. I feel like with an Eagles ticket, you'd love it, Krabs. You'd love
I don't even think I could say I want to see it. Do it a real way. Do it a real way. Score a real way. Right? Don't just push on, your running back who's playing QB's butt into the end zone. Right?
Yeah.
And I'll leave you with this, and then we can move on from this angle. But surely he finds the end zone with a normal PrizePicks Square up after 4 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm aware, Krabs. I'm aware.
Tried to bite my tongue and keep the Eagles hate out of it. I did a pretty good job for the first 46 minutes to everybody listening, but I caved. I cannot root for that. And I hope you're wrong.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to root for it. I figured you couldn't.
I know. And this could only help him find the end zone, me saying these things. So maybe it's just another tush push. It should be minus 1,000, but for some reason it's only minus 110, and it's just that free and you go about your day. Sure.
Would be great.
Sure. You got another one that's maybe a little less square?
Yes, which probably if I were to take any other option, you probably wouldn't want it to be this one, but I like Noah Gray, which I tried to take something of his last week. I tried to take his yards. I thought it was going to be a good look, and they're going to trust him to cute against the Bills, but they really didn't have to, especially after Taylor Rapp got ruled out and the Bills had no safeties. But I noticed something in that game because I was obviously watching because I needed him to get pretty much one catch, and they weren't looking his way. But all of his routes, both in that game and in the prior game against the Texans, were relatively similar. He got more targets in the Texans game, but he was a complete ghost. Didn't get a single catch in that game against the Bills. And all of his routes were, for the most part, routes that are just going straight out to the flat. A little deep, though. They were kind of like shallow slants, but like going to the outside of the field. And the action of the play was always going the opposite way. Like if you had 3 routes on the right side, they were going to the left while Noah Gray was running to the right. And I've seen a lot of Noah Gray touchdowns in the past couple of years that have always been, they look like a broken play. They look like a coverage bust. There's never really a Noah Gray touchdown that looks like a normally schemed play. So it's always something that's against the grain of the play call. And it feels like they were setting something up in that Bills game. And they never quite got to it in the scheme of the game because they're throwing a little deeper because, again, Bills had no safety, so they're better matchups to attack elsewhere, and, they're weak in the middle of the defensive line, so they're running the ball too. But against this Eagles team, if you're looking for something to break down man coverage, how about one of the classic Noah Gray kind of, I don't know, sometimes they run them with a little wheel route on the outside. Sometimes they'll run them just in a really deep crosser over the middle of the field, and it'll get behind the whole defense while you got Kelsey running to the opposite pylon. There's going to be something there that I feel like is kind of setting the tone for this to get really weird game plan wise for the Chiefs. Andy Reid's always going to pull out something super exotic and pull out all the stops. When you're playing against a defense this tough, there's got to be a look like that to set something on fire. And I think it's going to come from that. He very well just might get one catch. I mean, it's Noah Gray, so what more do you expect? But I think that one catch is going to mean something as he strolls his way into the end zone.
Well, again, I guess I hope you're wrong too with a Travis Kelce touchdown ticket in my pocket. Shit. You tell me I got to root against both these squares? Or both these plays that Javon's bringing?
Yeah, you might have
I don't like the sound of that.
It's all right. Maybe I guess you really don't want multiple touchdowns for your under either, but maybe Kelsey is eye candy for a great touchdown and he gets his own after that. I mean, we know the Chiefs are probably scoring more than 14 points.
Probably. But if both the tight ends end up scoring those 2 touchdowns and the game somehow goes under and the Eagles win, I will proceed to buy a lottery ticket or a Powerball ticket later that night. All right. Well, some conflicting takes on who finds the end zone, but I feel like we're on the same wavelength when it comes to a side, a total, and some of those other PrizePicks Squares. So we'll be all right. You want to move and talk about some of these cheeky novelty props they got up on these books?
Yeah. Interested to see where your head's at for some of those.
Jovan, they got some crazy ones up on the books this year for the Super Bowl. You know, they go all out, right? This is their Super Bowl, literally, right? This is where they make their coins. They've got some crazy ones up. I mean, they've got on Green Book, and no free ads, not going to shout out anybody here, but an entire category, Swifty specials. Makes me want to put ice picks in my freaking eyeballs looking at that, but they have an entire slate of over 30 or 40 different props you can take in this game, and they're all named after different Taylor Swift songs. Wow, I hate that.
I bet.
That's annoying. And I wish you could fade some of these, but you can only take them one way. You want me to throw some of these at you? See what you think?
Let me see him, Krabs.
15. Patrick Mahomes to have 15 plus rushing yards and 215 plus passing yards. And that one you could take for a measly minus 175 price.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so not only is it not going to hit, but you also got to lay minus 175 on it.
I'm certain.
Yeah, that's not a great look for my more than 30.5 rushing yards square that I was talking about earlier, but maybe it'll just be a rushing attack and you'll see him go less than 215 passing yards for that not to hit. I don't know, but it'll find a way. Here's a good one. Shake it off. Jesus. Eagles to score first and then the Chiefs to win. That one's plus 300. Should I end the pod now? Should we just call it?
Might as well wrap it up, dude.
Jesus, dude. If that hits at plus 300, everybody who takes that does not deserve the coins. To be honest with you, you're a fool. Unbelievable. Who's locking these in and then going about their day being okay with themselves? Oh, Jovan, there is one more that I wanted to talk about that does not involve Taylor Swift, thank God. This is one that I really wanted to fade, but you don't have the ability to because these books only let you take it one way, so you have to lose coins. It's this Jalen Hurts and Pat Mahomes to each record 15-plus passing yards in each quarter. Okay, does that make sense? I know that was a mouthful, but both starting QBs, 15-plus passing yards in each quarter. Doesn't that sound like it's so easy? Right? Doesn't that sound like the freest, promo novelty bet you can lock in for the whole Super Bowl? And Jovan, it's minus 105, right? So it's almost even money they're giving it to you. Okay? Yeah. You're telling me that hitting? There's no chance. That makes me want to do a backflip, lock it in my under in the game.
That sounds odd. Yeah.
Right? Oh, man. Yeah, that if I could fade that, I would. If I had to lay minus 200 to fade that, I would. I don't even care if the EV nerds can come after me for that, but if I were able to fade that, I would do it. You just can't. But I feel great about my under there. Trying to find some other good ones here, Jovan. Oh, here's one, plus 7,500. So surely this one hits, and it's the first one up that you see. That's not bait at all. That's not fucked up. Each team to score 1+ rushing tutty and 1+ passing tutty in each half. I mean, this under needs to be taken in the game. These are making me feel great about the under in the game. And Jovan, that does not even sound like a difficult outcome to play out. Only 1+ rushing tutty and 1+ passing tutty from each team in each half. And it's plus 7,500. Okay, so one of these two teams is dropping a dud in either half. I don't know who it's going to be, and same thing goes with that, 15+ passing yards in each quarter play. That was minus 105. There's going to be some gross, bad quarters of football in this game. You're going to see punts. If I could take a more than punts novelty prop, I'll be all in on that. If only Tressway was playing.
Those.
Right? Sign me up for that. You're going to see punts galore in this game.
Yeah.
Some crazy cheeky props.
I got a couple here, Krabs. Remember the so I'm all in on some trickery in this game. Not crazy to say because Andy Reid's involved, but remember that Grand Slam like lines they had up for the MLB and the World Series that we thought were kind of odd because I'm not like huge in like the novelty prop market for the World Series necessarily, but I at least take a look. And those are not often, I think, offered everywhere, but also like as front and center as they were for the World Series, which I thought were odd. And then obviously we get one in game 1, which was hilarious. You know, the one that I see on the green book that kind of reminds me of that a little bit. They have all the novelty props. They have just the normal coin toss, Gatorade colors, scoregami, jersey specials, and right in the middle, you got a flea flicker, which is yes for plus 250.
Huh.
I am in on that. Let me tell you. And I don't even think
we've seen a ton of flea flickers this season, Jovan.
Have we though?
I mean, I feel like we've seen a ton of flea flickers. I gotta check the data. I gotta check the Goots database for that one.
I feel like we've seen a lot of trick plays where other people or other players are throwing passes, but I don't know about flea flickers. I'm trying to remember if we've seen a bunch of them. I can remember a couple, I guess, off top, but yeah, I don't know that we've seen too many. But I am in on both. I like the yes for a flea flicker at plus 250, and then you also have, I mean, I bet this pretty much every year, and I think a lot of people do too. Yeah, over on total number of players to have a passing attempt, which over 2.5. So somebody not named Hurts or Mahomes to throw a pass, which I think is incredibly possible.
Wow. That could be a cheeky novelty prop. Okay. What about successful 2-point conversion at plus 180?
Absolutely. You know, I'm in for that, especially if it happens to be the Eagles on that side, because, you know, especially if they get a penalty on the extra point, God forbid, that's Jalen Hurts octopus waiting to happen.
Yep. I'll tell you one that I can actually get down with here. It's any quarter to end scoreless. If you were to make odds for that in a game involving 2 elite offenses, after we just saw the most points in conference championship history, right? And you were to put your little odds maker cap on and say, you know, what odds am I setting for this prop? Any quarter to end scoreless. What would you make the odds for that? And don't get sharp on me. Just be simple brain. Don't think about it too much. Common sense take.
I don't know, dude. I don't look at those markets very often. Plus 300.
I thought you were going to say way more.
Probably. I
thought you were going to say way more. Yeah, it was. Well, that was actually really close.
Plus 300.
It was really close. Plus 400. Plus 400. Yep. I would have thought that would have been plus 1,000. I would have thought that would have been way juicier, in my opinion, after we saw the points 2 weekends ago in a game involving Mahomes and Jalen Hurts and 2 teams who have, you know, been in this dance before against each other not too long ago, right? I would have thought that would be closer to plus 1,000, but maybe that's a pipe dream.
I can understand where you're coming from. I can. Have you seen any of these cross sport specials that are up too? Just taking a peek at those. So I've got one.
Are there any funny ones? Throw it at me.
Yeah, I mean, you won't like this one because you like the under in the game, but they have one that is Eagles points combined with Tyrese Maxey points on February 9th against the Bucks. 49.5. I'm taking the over. Taking the over. We're locking.
You know, it's Saquon's birthday, I'm pretty sure, on Sunday as well. You could take Saquon to score 5+ touchdowns for plus 15,000.
Wow.
That's an actual prop that is up on a book.
Wow.
That they think is fair to put up there, that you have a chance of actually hitting.
Yeah, I don't quite know about that.
Yeah. Definitely don't imagine you take that, he gets 4.
Yeah, I don't want to doubt Saquon, but at the same time, I don't know if we're getting 5. You know what? While we're on the touchdown side of things, you know what I do think as a crazy shock, because I'm still sweating a ticket from the beginning of the playoffs when we were talking about this, those long shot value plays, but they have Jalen Hurts to lead the NFL playoffs in rushing touchdowns. He has 3. Saquon has 5. They still have Jalen Hurts at plus 600, and I obviously think he's getting 1. I don't know if we're shutting out Saquon necessarily, but again, that's kind of the whole focus of Spags' defense. I think they can sit and sleep a lot better with Saquon staying out of the end zone and Jalen Hurts ending up with, a triple brotherly performance, or whatever you want to call it, than the other way around. So I think even though you probably need a Saquon bagel in the end zone to really have a legit shot, I think it's not impossible at plus 600.
I've seen worse bets. That's for sure. I've seen worse.
Yeah.
Jovan, I got one more for you that's actually minus money. We've been talking about a lot of plus chicken plays, but I got one more for you before we wrap this up. This is one that I actually might think about playing. And this is one that people who are scared to fade Pat Mahomes, but want some skin in the game involving the Eagles, this could be a good look to take here. Most time of possession. You got the Chiefs at plus 105. You got the Eagles at minus 140. If you think there's going to be some fluke bullshit, if you think the refs are rigging this, which, by the way, both those things are incorrect, and you're all in your own head and you just can't pick the right sides, okay? But if those are two things you believe in, maybe you don't want to take the Eagles full game, right? Maybe you don't want to have an Eagles ticket in your pocket against Mahomes, who's won 2 straight bowls and looks like he's the next Tom Brady, right? Maybe you just want to back the team to outplay the Chiefs and then not worry about the scores and how it ends up working out, but take them to have the most possession time, especially when they got Saquon Barkley, a workhorse who, although we like Jalen Hurts' pass attempts and completions, I'm sure Saquon's going to get the ball a time or two on the ground with that clock ticking, and maybe even find success a time or two as well. I like Eagles at minus 140 here to have the most time of possession when Pat Mahomes is trying to do it all himself, and when his 2 running backs, who have not impressed me much this whole season, fall flat on their face in this game and can't really impact the offense. I want to take the Eagles to chew clock and have the most time of possession in this game at minus 140.
They are a book of shoe masters. That's exactly what they want to do. And I mean, we've seen that whole model in a couple different areas work. I know the Commanders pulled it off against the Bucs. So I mean, I don't know why a team wouldn't want to try and keep the ball out of Pat Mahomes' hands than out of the offense's hands. Granted, it's obviously very hard against that defense, but if there's any team that's built to actually do that, I think I would only feel confident saying the Chiefs.
I agree.
Or the Eagles, sorry.
It's got to be the Eagles at minus 140. It's got to be the Eagles. All right, Jovan, W Pods. Looking forward to sweating out the Super Bowl with you down there in Dallas this weekend. And to all the listeners out there, we appreciate you guys sticking with us over an hour in. Make sure you guys are following us wherever you're listening, whether that's Spotify, Apple Music. Drop a follow so you get notified when we have more pods getting released on the Bookit Sports Podcast Network. And make sure you're subscribed and have the notice turned on our YouTube page at Bookit Sports. We just hit 10K subbies the other day, so we're still trying to grow that puppy. Please get involved. And if you're watching this on YouTube right now, click the subscribe button, drop a like on the video, and turn the notice on so you get alerted when we have more posts going up. Okay, you don't got to dig and find it yourself. W's. We appreciate you guys. Jovan, looking forward to sweating out the Eagles with you this weekend, my man. Let's cash.
Gonna need it.
Gonna need it. All right. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you on the next pod. We'll be.